Chapter 22:11 Amateur. Within the vast dark space, figures started to form in front of Jian Wushuang. Humor young man who had a devilish look appeared. He held a long sword as he stared at Jian Wushuang with his emotionless eyes. Then, whoosh! This young man attacked. He appeared in front of Jian Wushuang and slashed with his long sword. This slash looked normal and it contained no sword skill. However, this ordinary slash was extremely fast with the power of a divine demon and some rules of order. Is he my opponent? Jian Wushuang stared at the devilish young man and smiled lightly. I also managed to master rules or order but am not familiar with it yet. I should take this chance to familiarize myself with this new power. Jian Wushuang attacked as he slashed his blood mountain sword. This slash contained the power of a divine demon and the space-time rules of order. Clang! Both long swords collided with equal power. The moment the swords collided, the devilish young man flicked his sword up in a weird manner as the sword was headed for his wrist. Jian Wushuang was caught by surprise as he quickly drew back his sword in response. Right then, the devilish young man used a little strength and the sword was headed for Jian Wushuang's throat at lightning speed. What? Jian Wushuang turned pale. At first, he knew that the devilish young man was not a simple opponent as his sword skills were simple and smooth. However, after they started sparring, he realized all these simple moves flowed extremely smoothly. He was perfect. Jian Wushuang was suppressed by the simple sword skill, a slash, a flick, a stab, a jab. Jian Wushuang finally turned serious. A unique sword essence radiated out from him. It was as though he had turned into a large, dark vortex. Sword Principle Shen Luo. Mixed Elements Spirit. Clang. 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 Collisions between the metallic blades could be heard clearly. Jian Wushuang had already used the sword skill, Mixed Element Spirit, to its full potential, while his opponent simply used ordinary attacks. Within the eternal chaotic world, any cultivators who cultivated the sword doctrine could cast these attacks easily. However, Jian Wushuang was completely suppressed by these simple attacks. The mixed element spirit he was casting was wonderfully refined. However, even this sword skill could barely fend off those simple attacks. Jian Wushuang could only retreat slowly. His sword skills were completely suppressed and he could not even use them to their full potential. Suddenly, clang, after a flurry of attacks, the sword that the devilish man held slashed across Jian Wushuang's wrist as the wrist was sliced off, together with the blood mountain sword. The devilish young man then stopped his attacks. Jian Wushuang stood there in the dark space in disbelief. He looked at the wound on his right hand before regenerating the hand immediately after channeling his divine power. He was overcome by waves of shock and disbelief. How can this be? How can such simple attacks suppress me? I was completely suppressed and not able to fight back at all. Are those really just simple attacks? Jian Wushuang was shaken to the core. His understanding of the sword doctrine was already extremely high. This was the case in the eternal chaotic world. He was the most powerful sword cultivator. The other almighties who excelled in sword doctrines were no match for him. Jian Wushuang too thought that his understanding of the sword doctrine was extremely deep. Back in the Blood Emperor Sanctuary grounds, he had been unable to suppress the Blood Emperor even though he had the superior power advantage. He then realized his experience in battle was nothing compared to that of the experts from the ancient past. He had to admit that even though there were incredible sword skills in this era, it was nothing compared to those from the ancient past. He had never thought that he would lose to someone who had equal power to him, and only used the basic attacks. And he was completely suppressed. His sword skills were like those of a kid compared to those of the devilish young man. It was laughable. Right then. Jian Wushuang. Your sword skills and understanding of the sword doctrine might be top tier in the first era. However, back in the ancient past, your understanding of the sword doctrine would be far too weak. You were not even qualified to be called a sword doctrine cultivator. You are an amateur. Emperor 13's voice appeared in the dark space. Amateur? Jian Wushuang was stunned. If the experts from the eternal chaotic world heard that their sword emperor was being called an amateur, there would be a great commotion. One of the strongest men in the eternal chaotic world, the man who was famous for his sword skills, Jian Wushuang. But in the eyes of Emperor 13, He was just an amateur. Everyone would usually look down on the person who said that, but Emperor 13 was the one who said it. Those who saw the battle between Emperor 13 and Blood Emperor, including Jian Wushuang, could not refute this. You are an amateur. You don't even know what sword doctrine truly is. You do not need too much style, nor too much power. A person who does not know much about sword doctrine can only unleash 10% of an extremely powerful sword skill, but a person who understands what sword doctrine truly is can unleash incredible power with just a simple skill. In your case, you are the former, Emperor 13 said. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang laughed bitterly. I never thought that my understanding of the sword doctrine was so laughable. This is not to blame you. In this era, the most powerful expert is only in the peak chaotic realm. Rules of order is far too high level for most of you, as all of you live under the restrictions in this world. It is far too difficult to experience what sword doctrine truly is, Emperor 13 continued. It was true. Jian Wushuang was the strongest sword user in this era. The experts in this era were far too weak. If they had been born in the ancient past, the sword doctrine Jian Wushuang would see or experience would be far more than in the eternal chaotic world. Chapter 22:12 Sword Doctrine. The Sword Doctrine Trial Tower can allow you to experience the higher form of sword doctrine. Just like your first opponent, he is considered a beginner in sword doctrine. If you can defeat him with your sword skills alone, you will be considered a beginner as well, Emperor 13 said. He is considered a beginner? Jian Wushuang looked at the devilish young man fiercely. He waved his hand as the Blood Mountain sword flew back into his hand. Let's go. Without hesitation, Jian Wushuang attacked once again. He battled the young man fiercely with all the sword skills he knew. Before long, he had lost again. Again. Jian Wushuang was not discouraged and he attacked again. He was completely immersed in his battle against the young man with a devilish look. Even though there was a large gap between the understanding of sword doctrine between the two, Jian Wushuang realized he had begun to understand more about the sword doctrine after multiple sparring sessions. Sword skill can be cast in this manner. Coherence. Smooth. A simple sword skill can be more powerful as compared to some top-tier ones. Sword, it can be used like this. Jian Wushuang was a fast learner. He lost countless times against the devilish young man. He would always learn something from each and every defeat, whether it was from his battle techniques or from his sword skills. Or he would figure out certain techniques the young man would use in his sword skills and learn from it. Even though he was being suppressed in every manner, he was constantly learning from his opponent and slowly becoming a stronger cultivator. After 3 years, Jian Wushuang still lost to the devilish young man, but was no longer suppressed. 5 years later, the devilish young man could only suppress Jian Wushuang in the form of sword skills. Even though Jian Wushuang's defeat was inevitable, it would take longer before he was actually defeated. 17 years later, Jian Wushuang could fight the devilish young man evenly head-on. 32 years later. Clang! Sparks were created as the long swords collided against each other. Jian Wushuang charged forward as the long sword in his hand turned into lightning and stabbed towards his opponent. The speed was too fast to be described with words. Clang! The tip of the blade collided with the body of the devilish young man. The blade did not pierce his body, but the impact caused him to lose balance and stumble a few steps backwards. After he steadied himself, the devilish young man looked at Jian Wushuang. This time, he did not attack. At the same time, his body started to evaporate. Looks like I finally defeated him. A hint of joy was seen in Jian Wushuang's eyes as he saw the body of the devilish young man start to evaporate. Up till today, he had been inside the Sword Doctrine Trial Tower for 32 years. During this time, he had been constantly battling the devilish young man. They had fought over tens of thousands of times. Initially, he had been completely suppressed. After all these years of hard work, Jian Wushuang had finally defeated the devilish young man. There had been great improvements in Jian Wushuang's sword skills, and his understanding of the sword doctrine was a level higher compared to before. The reason why I can defeat him is not just because I have a better understanding of the sword doctrine. I have with me sword principle Shen Luo, which was one of the most powerful sword principles back in the ancient past. This helped me out greatly during our battles. If I were to use the most simple sword skills, I would need some more time before I could defeat him with the simple skills, Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. However, he could still go even against the devilish young man if he only used the most simple sword skills. According to Emperor 13, he should be a beginner in sword doctrine. From an amateur to a beginner, Jian Wushuang exclaimed. In the space in front of him, another figure started to form slowly. This time, his opponent was a graceful lady in white cloak. She had a cold gaze. This was his second opponent in the sword doctrine trial tower. Her sword skills were much stronger compared to the devilish young man's. Soon, the lady in white cloak attacked. Jian Wushuang fought back, but was defeated easily. On the floating piece of land, the ancient, black sword doctrine trial tower stood tall. Emperor 13 sat down cross-legged again. He looked at the tower as his vision turned cloudy. Sword doctrine. There is no end to the sword doctrine. Even though I reach the peak of the sword doctrine, I still feel that my understanding is not complete. What exactly is the perfect sword doctrine? Emperor 13 muttered to himself before closing his eyes slowly. He had reached the peak of the sword doctrine. Even during the prime time during the ancient past, few could have reached the level he had. There was almost no one who was stronger than him in the aspect of sword doctrine. Even so, he was still trying to chase after a better or higher form of sword doctrine. There was no limit to the doctrine. This was also the case for sword doctrine. Jian Wushuang, who was in the sword doctrine trial tower, was immersed in the battles he had with countless number of opponents. He was learning from his imperfections during these battles. Time continued to pass. 1,000 years flashed by in the blink of an eye. The sword doctrine trial tower still stood tall in the vast, dark space. Two figures were engaged in a heated battle. Jian Wushuang held his sword single-handedly. He did not use the secret skill of the ancient god clan to have 9 heads and 18 arms. To him now, having 18 arms and swords had no difference compared to holding one single sword on one hand. Having too many hands became a burden. He moved his sword around casually. It could be a thrust, or a slash, or a flick. Each move was smooth and decisive. He moved around elegantly and gracefully as he cast his sword skills. His vision was sharp and focused. His opponent was an elder with red hair. The sword skills of this elder were extremely fast and violent. Jian Wushuang was extremely calm in this battle. During the heated exchange, he was trying his best to find his opponent's weakness. After a while, the red-haired man slashed his sword. Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up when he saw this move. He swung the sword in his hands as it thrust out in an eerie manner. Sword Principle Shen Luo. Sanguis Extremis Style. PFFTT. A bloody mist erupted from the elder man's chest as he backed off. This is the 16th one, Jian Wushuang smiled. Chapter 22:13 Fighting Power skyrocketed. Jian Wushuang spent 1,000 years inside the sword doctrine trial tower sparring against other experts. Jian Wushuang had lost count of how many battles he had fought. However, he knew his sword skills were improving at a tremendous rate. No other opportunities could help him improve at such a great rate. This was because he was fighting against an expert of a completely new level. It was as though these experts had opened a new door to sword doctrine. There had been a leap in his sword skills and his understanding of sword doctrine compared to before. Jian Wushuang felt that he could kill his old self with one simple slash. That was how much he had improved. In the dark space, a space tunnel appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. Looks like I took exactly 1,000 years to defeat 16 opponents. Jian Wushuang smiled as he followed this space tunnel out of the sword doctrine trial tower. Emperor 13. Jian Wushuang greeted as he bowed slightly. With the great improvement in his understanding of the sword doctrine, Jian Wushuang felt completely different when he looked at Emperor 13 once again. VAR AXID 6327 document, element ISO 6327, SSP 6327-math floor date now. Windowed pubic stag windowed pubic stag windowed pubic stag. Back then, he had not had a clue how powerful Emperor 13 was. He only knew he was extremely powerful. Now, he felt that Emperor 13 himself was a unique divine sword. The sword essence that he radiated made Jian Wushuang's heart throb. Even though my understanding of the sword doctrine has improved greatly, I am nothing compared to Emperor 13, Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. He knew where he stood. He knew he still needed a lot of practice, as his sword skills now were still not good enough for him to go against the Blood Emperor. When Emperor 13 fought Blood Emperor, he was under the restrictions of heaven and earth. He could only use a small portion of his sword skills. However, this little portion of his sword skills was already far superior to what Jian Wushuang had right now. How incredible were his sword skills when Emperor 13 was in his prime? Jian Wushuang could not imagine that. How many opponents did you defeat during the 1,000 years you were inside? Emperor 13 asked. While Jian Wushuang had been sparring opponents within the Sword Doctrine Trial Tower, Emperor 13 had been meditating and did not take note of what happened within the tower. I defeated 16, Jian Wushuang said. 16? Emperor 13 nodded his head in approval. He expected that Jian Wushuang could defeat around 13 or 14 opponents. Jian Wushuang had gone beyond his expectations and defeated 16. The opponents within the Trail Tower would become increasingly stronger, and it would be increasingly more difficult to defeat them. From the moment you defeat the first opponent, you are considered an amateur in the Sword Doctrine. If you can defeat the opponents, you will have reached the initial success. When you defeat 20, you will have reached the Profound Realm. You still have a lot to work on before you reach Profound Realm, as you have only managed to defeat 16 opponents, Emperor 13 said. I've only reached initial success? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. He had thought that the improvement he had over the 1,000 years was incredible enough. He had not expected that he had only reached initial success in his understanding of the Sword Doctrine. You will only reach the Profound Realm after defeating 20 opponents. What if you defeat 30, 50, or even 100 opponents? Jian Wushuang asked. You are still in the Profound Realm after defeating 30 opponents. You will only reach complete satisfactory for the Sword Doctrine after defeating 50 opponents. As for 100 opponents, you have exceeded the complete satisfactory for the Sword Doctrine and finally reached the Sword Doctrine realm. You can then be called an expert in Sword Doctrine, Emperor 13 said. Sword Doctrine realm? Jian Wushuang frowned. From what Emperor 13 had said, there were realms that differentiated people of different levels of mastery of the Sword Doctrine. Jian Wushuang still had a lot of room to improve before he could reach the Profound Realm. Even if someone surpassed being complete satisfactory for Sword Doctrine and reached the Sword Doctrine realm, they would be considered an expert in Sword Doctrine, but not a top-tier one. Sword Doctrine is really broad and profound, Jian Wushuang exclaimed. Of course. As for you now, you need to continuously accumulate experience to elevate your mastery of Sword Doctrine. Even the Sword Doctrine realm is a far-fetched concept for you in this era. However, initial success in Sword Doctrine is already enough for you to completely dominate everyone in this era, Emperor 13 said. Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up in excitement. Jian Wushuang's mastery of Sword Doctrine was much better than it had been before. Aside from the experts from the ancient past, there would be no one within the eternal chaotic world with a greater understanding of Sword Doctrine. With his sword skill, the amount of divine power he had from the ultimate phase of the 7th step inverse cultivation and his understanding of rules of order, his fighting power was far greater than what it had been. He was so much more powerful that he himself had no idea how strong he actually was. However, he knew for sure that he could definitely beat Emperor Bai in a bat. Lord Emperor 13, thank you. Jian Wushuang thanked him gratefully. Both the Heaven-Suppressing Monument or the Sword Doctrine Trial Tower had helped him greatly as his fighting power had skyrocketed. Both of these treasures belonged to Emperor 13. Both of these opportunities were given to him by Emperor 13. Furthermore, Emperor 13 had helped him twice before, and hence Jian Wushuang was extremely grateful. I have already given you your opportunities. You can leave now, Emperor 13 said coldly and indifferently. Jian Wushuang felt odd. It was true that Emperor 13 had given him opportunities and treasures to help him improve. However, why had he done this? Why did he give such amazing opportunities? What was he trying to achieve? Emperor 13 did not mention this at all. Just like he had said, he would not tell Jian Wushuang anything at all. When the time was right, Jian Wushuang would know everything. Jian Wushuang frowned slightly. Before he had visited Emperor 13, he had many questions that he had wanted to ask and hoped for an answer from Emperor 13. Now, The number of questions he had only increased after what he had encountered within the head, seeing the bold man from the ancient display. However, he did not ask after seeing how cold Emperor 13 was towards him. Goodbye. Jian Wushuang bowed before leaving the way he came. Emperor 13 fell silent as he looked at Jian Wushuang as he slowly disappeared from his sight. He looked up at the bold man sitting there with a glint of uncertainty. There isn't much time left. I tried my best to help the little one. Now, it's up to him alone to reach your benchmark. Old man, I hope everything that you are trying to do is worth it. I hope this little man can achieve it. If not, my 7-star black sect. Emperor 13 clenched his fists tightly and said no more. Chapter 22:14 The Changes in the Lineage of Stars. Jian Wushuang returned the way he came. The various defensive mechanisms were not activated. Soon, Jian Wushuang was out of Chill Wind Valley. Sigh. Jian Wushuang heaved a deep sigh after he was back on the surface. He looked back at Chill Wind Valley as he was still in shock after what he had seen. He knew that the owner of the head, the bold man, definitely had many incredible secrets. It was a pity that he was too weak to even have the right to know these secrets. During the 2,000 years that Jian Wushuang had been in the gigantic head, his overall fighting power had reached a completely new level and he was very pleased with it. Time to return, Jian Wushuang muttered. He flipped out a transmission token. Hall Master Yuan just transmitted a message. Hall Master Yuan, what's the matter? Jian Wushuang asked. It's nothing major. However, if you are free, you should go back and visit the lineage of stars, Hall Master Yuan said. Roger. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. He then returned to the Green Fire World. After Jian Wushuang moved the headquarters of the lineage of stars, it had been growing at an incredible rate given the excellent cultivating environment Green Fire World had. Lineage of Stars had become even stronger and more powerful, even after many top-tier experts had been dying during the battle against the Three Emperors world. 30% of the territory within the Green Fire World was occupied by the different clans from the Eternal Chaotic World. Because of Jian Wushuang, Lineage of Stars had managed to secure a bigger territory compared to the other clans. A brilliant galaxy hovered in the air. The galaxy had completely recovered due to the abundance in spiritual influence of heaven and earth. The galaxy was even more brilliant and vast than it had been before. The power of the formation was even more powerful as well. Using special techniques, it could help out the disciples of the Lineage of Stars greatly. Jian Wushuang appeared within the brilliant galaxy. It has been a long time since I was here at the Lineage of Stars. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. He usually remained within Wushuang City. He left the matters within the Lineage of Stars to Hall Master Yuan. After the Great Battle, he had been in slumber for 24,000 years, before he had gone to Chill Wind Valley. As Palace Master, Jian Wushuang had not come back to the Lineage of Stars for a very long time. The changes within the Lineage of Stars after all these years were huge. He could feel the difference when he stepped into the vast galaxy. The galaxy is completely different. The number of meta-beasts born from the galaxy is far more than before. They also have a much greater effect on cultivators. Jian Wushuang smiled as his soul power spread out and covered the entire galaxy. He could sense that there were many meta-beasts within the galaxy and they were very beneficial for the disciples when they cultivated. As of now, there were several disciples trying to capture the meta-beasts. Jian Wushuang smiled as he walked towards the interior of the galaxy. Soon, he appeared within the headquarters of Lineage of Stars. After he had returned to the headquarters, he realized there were far more experts and disciples than there had been before. Both the numbers and quality of experts had increased greatly. Within the Lineage of Stars, the disciples were separated into 3 levels. Everyone started as a normal disciple before they were promoted to core disciple. Finally, they would be promoted to disciples of Star Palace. The number of disciples of Star Palace had increased as well. There were 10 disciples of Star Palace for each level in the realm of Universe God. Every one of them was a top-tier geniuses. For Phase 3 Universe God, every single disciple of Star Palace was enlightened to the power of Heaven Way. While Jian Wushuang was still a disciple of Star Palace, it would be difficult to find other disciples of Star Palace who were also enlightened to the power of Heaven Way. It seemed it's not as difficult for a Phase 3 universe god to be enlightened to the power of Heaven Wei now. This was due to the cultivating environment. After Jian Wushuang entered the headquarters of the Lineage of Stars, he roamed around within the Lineage of Stars instead of going to find Hall Master Yuan. Soon, a battle between disciples caught his attention. This battle occurred at one of the stars. The two people battling it out were both Phase 3 universe gods. One of them was a disciple of Star Palace, while the other was just a core disciple. This battle attracted the attention of many other disciples as they crowded around to watch. Jian Wushuang was within the crowd. Both senior brothers are very powerful. Senior brother Chen Yi and senior brother Chen Feng both are enlightened to the power of Heaven Wei. However, senior brother Chen Feng was enlightened for a long period of time. Furthermore, he is a disciple of the Star Palace and should be stronger. Look, senior brother Chen Yi is already suppressed. Even though senior brother Chen Yi is a top-tier core disciple, he still has work to do before he can beat senior brother Chen Feng. Jian Wushuang heard the surrounding chatter. He shook his head slightly and said, Chen Yi's sword skill is not so simple. He might win this battle. Jian Wushuang commented casually. Jian Wushuang could see that Chen Yi had yet to use all his sword skills considering his battle experience and how much more powerful he was. Right after he commented, several disciples looked over at Jian Wushuang. You think senior brother Chen Feng will lose? Are you kidding? That's right. Senior brother Chen Feng is a disciple of the Star Palace. Hey, who are you? Why have I never seen you before? Furthermore, what do you mean when you say senior brother Chen Feng will lose to senior brother Chen Yi? A teenage girl in purple clothes stared at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang was stunned. Right then, Chen Yi finally used all his sword skills. It was swift and decisive as he immediately turned the battle around. Within moments, he had defeated Chen Feng. He really won? The teenage girl in purple clothes was shocked as they had all expected Chen Feng to win. In the arena, Chen Feng looked at Chen Yi, enraged. Your sword skills. Senior brother Chen Feng. Hall Master He Xiao mentored me personally. That is why I had a breakthrough in my sword skills. Otherwise, there would be no way I could beat you, Chen Yi said. Chapter 22:15 Palace Master. Is that the case? The disciples watching then understood what had happened. The most powerful man in the Lineage of Stars was the Palace Master. Below the Palace Master were the Hall Masters, who were all Almighties. Among all the Hall Masters, Hall Master He Xiao was one that many respected greatly. He himself was a genius who was incredibly powerful. By many myths he was also a lineal disciple of the Palace Master. He was one of the most powerful men in the Lineage of Stars. It would have been weird if one did not improve greatly after being mentored by him personally. After hearing the explanation, Chen Feng felt more at ease. On the other hand, Jian Wushuang looked weird. He Xiao was his lineal disciple. Never have I thought that little brat would have such a high status within the Lineage of Stars. Jian Wushuang smiled. You there. You have yet to answer my question. How did you know senior brother Chen Yi has yet to use all his sword skills? Furthermore, who are you? The teenage girl in purple clothes asked Jian Wushuang again. I guessed it, Jian Wushuang answered casually. You guessed it? The teenage girl in purple clothes did not want to let Jian Wushuang go just like that. Right then. Whoosh. A top figure appeared on this star as the aura of a top-tier chaotic real god radiated out in all directions. All the disciples on that planet panicked. What are all of you doing? It was a graceful, handsome young man. Even though he was not angry, everyone was afraid. He scanned the crowd as all the disciples including Chen Yi and Chen Feng lowered their heads. Aside from Jian Wushuang, no one dared to look him in the eye. This graceful young man noticed Jian Wushuang. The graceful young man turned pale as he appeared in front of Jian Wushuang at the next moment. Greetings, Palace Master, the graceful young man greeted as he broke out in cold sweat. The reason why he radiated out his aura was to control the situation. He had never thought that Jian Wushuang would be in the crowd as well. Ling Fei Bai, it has been a while. How are you? Jian Wushuang smiled. This graceful young man was Ling Fei Bai. They had both been disciples of the Star Palace at one point in time. When Jian Wushuang had just joined the Star Palace, he had fought Ling Feibai and lost to him. Now that they had met again, their fighting power and status were incomparable. However, Ling Feibai was a genius. He was the strongest top-tier chaotic real god. His name was on the real god ranking list, and he had high hopes of breaking through to become an almighty palace master. Still remembers me. Ling Feibai was pleasantly surprised. Seeing this, the other disciples were shocked. Who is he? Why does Elder He Ling treat him so respectfully? Elder He Ling is one of the most powerful real gods within the lineage of stars. He does not even treat an ordinary hall master with this much respect. If I heard correctly, Elder Ling called him Palace Master? Palace Master? Which Palace Master? The disciples were shocked. Palace Master? How many Palace Masters were there within the lineage of Star? There was only one. The identity of the man in front of them. There are some things I have to do. I shall take my leave. Jian Wushuang smiled as he disappeared from everyone's sight. After Jian Wushuang left, everyone on the star erupted into a frenzy. Palace Master. Oh my God. I actually saw the Palace Master himself. The Palace Master of the lineage of stars is one of the most powerful men in the eternal chaotic world. He managed to turn the tides of the great battle more than 20,000 years ago and was our savior. He just appeared in front of us? It really is the Palace Master. Never had I thought that he would be this easygoing. The disciples started to chatter in excitement. Jian Wushuang was referred to as a legend. Within the eternal chaotic world, many young cultivators respected him and believed in him blindly, especially those from the lineage of stars and the green fire world. However, it would be extremely difficult for even almighties to meet him personally. As for these disciples in the realm of universe gods, it was all the more impossible to meet him. However, Jian Wushuang had just appeared in front of them. Oh my God! I just spoke to the Palace Master and he replied? The teenage girl in purple clothes was dazed. She was overwhelmed with excitement. At the same time, she finally knew why Jian Wushuang knew that Qianyi had yet to use all his sword skills. Even though it was Hall Master He who had mentored Qianyi, Hall Master He Xiu was Jian Wushuang's disciple. Jian Wushuang did not know that the disciples had reacted that way. He had appeared on that star to view the battle between the disciples as it had piqued his interest. After he left that star, Jian Wushuang reached the meeting hall within the lineage of stars where Hall Master Yuan, He Xiu, Hall Master Jiu Xin and others were waiting. Jian Wushuang sat on the throne within the meeting hall and the remaining 10 experts sat below him. The number of almighties within the lineage of stars was higher more than before. Some of these almighties were originally disciples within the lineage of stars, while others were experts that came and pledged their loyalty. During the battle, the lineage of stars suffered heavy losses. Emperor God Ju Yin, Emperor God Shen Wu and Hall Master Nai Yun died and lineage of stars needed experts to fill the gaps. Right now, these almighties looked at Jian Wushuang respectfully. Come, speak. What happened? Jian Wushuang asked as he looked down at everyone. Hall Master Yuan stood up and said, Palace Master. As you know, the lineage of stars is getting stronger by the day. Our influence and standing in the eternal chaotic world is also improving. Now we are wondering what to do to those enemies we had. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. Lineage of stars indeed had many enemies. Back then, there had been 3 forces that had allied together and attacked their headquarters. Luckily, he had been there. With the help of Emperor 13, they had defeated this wave of enemies. After that, because of the Great War, the lineage of stars had focused on improving their own strength. However, they would still fight there and teach their enemies if necessary. However, they had already settled their grudges with some of their enemies. Chapter 22:16 Abnormality. Just like Abysmal Palace, Jian Wushuang and Abysmal Saint Master settled their grudges and became good friends. Lineage of Stars and Abysmal Palace would not have any more disputes as both parties were already on good terms. Like Soaring Heaven King Palace. Soaring Heaven King Palace had offended Jian Wushuang the most back then. However, with Jian Wushuang's current power level, he did not care about Soaring Heaven King Palace. Furthermore, the leader of the Soaring Heaven King Palace, Great Emperor Qianling, had fought together with Jian Wushuang during the battle at the Three Emperors World. Great Emperor Qianling had given his all during the battle, hence the hatred between Jian Wushuang and the Soaring Heaven King Palace was not as strong anymore. After the battle, Great Emperor Qianling had apologized to Jian Wushuang personally. Even though on a personal level, their grudge was settled, their respective clans still hated each other. The lineage of stars now was extremely powerful. Even though they had not eliminated their enemies, it was normal for the lineage of stars to make lives for their enemies difficult. Jian Wushuang knew about this. Of course, lineage of stars would not cross certain boundaries and they knew their limits. Why? Are our enemies still trying something funny? Jian Wushuang looked at Hall Master Yuan and asked. These enemies knew their place and did not try anything funny at all. When they saw people from the lineage of stars, they would hide and would not offend us at all. However, the real martial arts divine church started behaving abnormally recently, Hall Master Yuan said. Real martial arts divine church? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. Real Martial Arts Divine Church was one of 5 members of the Star Extermination Alliance. However, after the battle back at the old location of Lineage of Stars, Real Martial Arts Divine Church had suffered heavy losses. Their leader was killed and their fighting power plummeted. On top of that, Lineage of Stars had continued to suppress them. This church was at the brink of annihilation. Lineage of Stars had stopped suppressing them after the ancient battlefield had appeared around the Green Fire world. Then, the Great War broke out and most of the other clans had been preoccupied fighting the war. They did not have excess manpower or strength to take note of the insignificant church. This had allowed them to barely survive till this day. If I am not wrong, the real Martial Arts Divine Church did not participate in the battle against Three Emperors World. Am I right? Jian Wushuang asked. Yes. When the battle broke out, experts from most clans within the eternal chaotic world joined the war. Some clans sent every single member they had, while there were some that did not participate at all. The clans that did not join used the reason that they were too weak not to reject the call of duty. The real Martial Arts Divine Church was one of such clans. Hall Master Yuan nodded his head and said. Of course, the real Martial Arts Divine Church was at the brink of collapse and did not want to send any almighties to the front line. The Sanctuary Alliance sympathized with them and did not force them to participate. After the Great War, the power of the other clans were greatly weakened, but not the real Martial Arts Divine Church. They managed to survive their predicament and became one of the more powerful clans. So the abnormality that you were talking about just now is that the real Martial Arts Divine Church started to treat us like enemies again, right? Jian Wushuang said coldly. That is right. The real Martial Arts Divine Church originally kept a low profile, even during the 24,000 years that you were in slumber. However, their attitudes changed in the last 1,000 years. They were no longer afraid and acted high and mighty. Then they dealt with us. Under normal circumstances, the Lineage of Stars would not cause trouble for the real Martial Arts Divine Church. However, during this period of time, the real Martial Arts Divine Church started to cause trouble for us. They even started to fight us head-on. It was like they were emboldened by something and no longer feared us. Is that the case? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. From what Hall Master Yuan had said, Jian Wushuang had noticed that the real Martial Arts Divine Church was acting abnormally. Because of Jian Wushuang, the Lineage of Stars had the best resources and was one of the most dominant forces in the eternal chaotic world. Which clan dared to make Lineage of Stars their enemies? Even if they suffered losses due to the Lineage of Stars, they would not take it to heart or tolerate these losses quietly. This was especially the case for the enemies of Lineage of Stars, as they were extremely careful not to anger their enemy. The real Martial Arts Divine Church did not keep a low profile, but provoked the Lineage of Stars actively. It might have been all right if they had provoked them while Jian Wushuang was in slumber. The reason could have been because they thought Jian Wushuang would not awaken, which would cause Lineage of Stars to lose their greatest asset. However, they had been extremely respectful while Jian Wushuang was in slumber and became more aggressive when Jian Wushuang awakened, to the point they dared to fight Lineage of Stars head-on. Hall Master Yuan is right. Where does the real Martial Arts Divine Church get their courage from? Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. Within the eternal chaotic world, Who dared to go against Jian Wushuang besides Emperor Bai? Even the great emperors did not have the courage to do so. Hall Master Yuan, have you sent experts to investigate this matter? Jian Wushuang asked. Yes. After the most recent fight we had, I sent Emperor God Ling Chu to investigate the matter. Lineage of Stars had many almighties and emperor gods. Emperor God Ling Chu was one of them. The leader of the real martial arts divine church died and was a lot weaker compared to before. The number of almighties they have is limited and they only had one ordinary emperor god. However, after Emperor God Ling Chu reached the territory that the real martial arts divine church controlled, we lost contact. If I am not wrong, Emperor God Ling Chu has already died, Hall Master Yuan said. Oh. Before he died, did he send any message back? Jian Wushuang asked. Nope. I only knew that he entered the territory controlled by the real martial arts divine church. Before he could send me any more messages, he died, Hall Master Yuan said as he shook his head. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes and thought seriously. Emperor gods were one of the most powerful kinds of people within the eternal chaotic world. It was not difficult to kill an emperor god as many peak emperor gods could do that. But it was not easy to kill one without giving him a chance to transmit a message. Chapter 22:17, Real Martial Arts Divine Church. Looks like something happened within the Real Martial Arts Divine Church, Jian Wushuang muttered. He had a keen look. This was the reason why I messaged you, Hall Master Yuan said. All right. I will settle this. Disciple, do you have anything important to settle in the short run? Jian Wushuang said. No, He Xiao answered. If that is the case, follow me to the territory that the real martial arts divine church controls, Jian Wushuang instructed. Roger, He Xiao nodded his head. Soon, Jian Wushuang set off. The real martial arts divine church was located in one of the sanctuaries and occupied a large territory. Before the battle at the Lineage of Stars, the real martial arts divine church had been an overlord in this territory and was one of the strongest clans in the eternal chaotic world. After the battle in the Lineage of Stars, their leader had died and their overall combat power was far worse compared to before. Even though they were still the most powerful clan on their territory, they were not as dominant anymore. However, within the last 1,000 years, the real martial arts divine church seemed to have recovered. They had become as dominant and overbearing as before. They had even dared to provoke Lineage of Stars. Those clans that tried something funny during the time they were weak were all eliminated. The real martial arts divine church had once again become the overlord of this territory and no one dared to provoke them. Within the real martial arts divine church, an elder man in white robes was in an independent space somewhere within the group of majestic buildings. The aura from this elder man was of the level of Emperor God. He was the last Emperor God that the real martial arts divine church had. Emperor God Bai Xing. Emperor God Bai Xing was one of the weakest Emperor gods in the eternal chaotic world. However, he was still an Emperor God, and hence he took over the real martial arts divine church and became its new leader. Church Master. A man in crimson armor appeared beside Emperor God Bai Xing. Have you done the final checks? Emperor Go Bai Xing asked coldly. Yes. There are a total of 12,000 people that come from outside the sanctuary. We have checked that they are virgins under the age of 30. According to the Lord's request, they have never cultivated nor explored the outside world before, the man in crimson armor said. Okay. Emperor God Bai Xing nodded his head as he looked up at a floating island in the sky. Many beautiful girls sat on the barren island. They were not cultivators, evident from the fact that they did not radiate any spiritual power. They looked around, confused. They did not know where they were or what was going to happen to them. This batch is good. The Lord should be satisfied. Now, go and prepare the next batch, Emperor God Bai Xing said. Don't worry, Church Master. I have already conquered 10 ancient worlds and commanded them to groom young girls who do not cultivate or venture out to explore the world. Even though it is difficult to have 1 out of 1,000, it should be all right if 10 of these ancient worlds groom at the same time. This can guarantee that we have enough numbers for the next batch 30 years later, the man in blood armor said confidently. That's good. Due to what happened to us back during the Great Battle, we were almost annihilated. Thank God we met the 3 lords. With their help, the real martial arts divine church can return to, or even exceed its former glory. It is even possible to outshine Lineage of Stars and even Green Fire World to become the most powerful clan in the eternal chaotic world. Emperor God Bai Sheng nodded his head and said, "That's right." The man in crimson armor nodded his head seriously. He was absolutely confident in the three lords. "Okay. Can you take your leave first? I will inform the lords to come over soon," Emperor God Bai Sheng said. "I shall take my leave," the man in crimson armor said. Emperor God Bai Sheng waited for a short while. Whoosh! A middle-aged man in silvery, loose robes appeared. "Greetings, my lord. According to your request, I have prepared another batch of 12,000 virgins," Emperor God Bai Sheng greeted respectfully. "Yes," the middle-aged man nodded his head as he looked up at the island filled with beautiful girls. He stuck out his tongue and gave a bloodthirsty smile. The middle-aged man then flew towards the island. Emperor God Bai Sheng turned back towards and left for his independent space. At the same time, he could clearly hear the sad and painful screeches and screams. Emperor God Bai Sheng did not hesitate at all as he quickly left the independent space and waited patiently. 7 days later, the middle-aged man in silvery, loose robes walked out of the independent space. When he came out, his robes were blood red. His tongue was still out, licking what remaining blood there was around his lips. He looked hungry for more. "I'll come again after 30 years," the middle-aged man said before he left. "See you, my lord." Emperor God Bai Sheng watched the middle-aged man leave as he returned to the independent space. The independent space turned into hell. On the island at the center, there was a sea of blood as the dead bodies of girls were stacked up like mountains. Emperor God Bai Sheng did not feel bad at all as he commanded people to start cleaning this place up. This was to provide a comfortable environment for the middle-aged when he would return 30 years later. As for the middle-aged man, he returned back to a quiet palace. When he appeared there, a blurry figure appeared from thin air. The middle-aged man looked serious when he saw the consciousness incarnation and greeted, "Brother, you went to absorb the blood of virgins?" the blurry figure asked. The middle-aged man laughed, embarrassed. "Didn't your older brother warn you to stop this addiction?" the blurry figure said with a deep voice. "Brother, you too know that we were in slumber for so many years. It has been too long since I tasted the splendid virgin blood. I finally managed to awaken. Of course I will take this chance to have a taste," the middle-aged man said. Chapter 22:18 The Bai. After hearing what the middle-aged man had said, the blurry figure fell silent. It was true that they had been in slumber for far too long. It was so long that they themselves had no idea how long they had been in slumber. After the great battle of the ancient past, they had been in slumber. Originally, there had been 5 of them. During the great battle, 2 of them died. Now, only the eldest brother, the second, and the youngest were alive. The youngest of them had a unique addiction. He liked to take in virgin blood. Back in the ancient past, there had been numerous experts, hence he had still held back. He only went crazy now because he was in an era in which he did not need to hold back and he had finally awakened after such a long time. "Brother, I will allow you to continue because you just awakened. However, please keep a low profile," the blurry figure reminded. "Don't worry. I asked the people from the real martial arts divine church to get those female virgins. There won't be too much commotion as these females aren't cultivators and have no background," the middle-aged man smiled. The blurry figure nodded his head slightly and stopped reprimanding. "Oh yes. Have the real martial arts divine church prepared the resources we need?" the blurry figure asked. "Yes, they have prepared them all. They are with me. However, these treasures are not of good quality." The middle-aged man brought out a Chen Kuan ring and said. The blurry figure scanned the ring, not surprised at all. "This era is far different from ours. They are doing well from the fact that they can still find these resources. At least these resources are beneficial to me and our older brother. Even though this era is far worse, there are still many resources out there. The main point is that the real martial arts divine church is too weak and cannot be even considered a top-tier clan. Their means are limited, so of course they cannot get us all the good stuff. It would be a different story if it was Sanctuary Alliance. Brother, I don't understand why we are staying within a mere real martial arts divine church. With our current fighting power, we can forcefully take over Sanctuary Alliance and use their power to find all the resources we need. Would that not be much faster and more efficient? The middle-aged man asked. It's not as easy as you think. Even though the average power level of this era is nothing compared to our era, that is because of restrictions of heaven and earth. We too are under these restrictions, and the maximum fighting power we can have is peak chaotic realm. We might not be strong compared to the top-tier experts in this era. For example, even our older brother is not confident in defeating the strongest two men in this era, Emperor Bai and Sword Emperor. They are just natives of this era. How strong can they be? The middle-aged man said disapprovingly. Do not look down on them. Don't forget Blood Emperor from 20,000 years ago. He was an emperor of the Blood Clan. Even though the Blood Clan had many emperors, those who reach that level are definitely much stronger than me and our older brother. And that Blood Emperor died in the hands of the natives you mentioned, the blurry figure said seriously. Furthermore, what we are targeting is Heaven's horizon. There is no need for us to provoke the experts from this era. Hence, you should maintain a low profile. Do not blame me for not helping you if you anger a top-tier expert from this era and die in their hands. After the blurry figure said this, he disappeared. The middle-aged man curled his lips, evidence that he did not take what the blurry figure said seriously. On the territory that the real martial arts divine church controlled, in a large town near the headquarters of the real martial arts divine church, Jian Wushuang was in a tavern in the town, drinking wine. He Xiao, who carried a long sword behind his back, appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. Master, He Xiao greeted Jian Wushuang respectfully. Don't be so tense. Sit down and relax. Jian Wushuang waved his hands. Yes, He Xiao nodded his head as he sat down in front of Jian Wushuang. How was the search? Jian Wushuang asked. I checked 3 different intel departments. The intel I got was the same. No one saw Emperor God Ling Chu from the lineage of stars. Furthermore, in recent years, there was no battle between any almighties in this territory. However, Emperor God Ling Chu did enter this territory before disappearing, He Xiao said as he frowned. An expert in the Emperor God realm had gone missing without any commotion at all. It was as though this Emperor God had never set foot here. This meant, it is okay. Since we cannot get any useful intel from these intel departments, let us find the experts from the real martial arts divine church and ask them. Jian Wushuang smiled. Does Master want to confront the real martial arts divine church head-on? He Xiao asked. Confront the real martial arts divine church? I do not know what they have. It is not wise to confront them head-on. Furthermore, if the experts hiding within the real martial arts divine church saw me coming and ran away, what can we do? Jian Wushuang shook his head and said. He Xiao was stunned for a moment before understanding why. There is no need for us to confront them in their headquarters. We can just bait them out. The best-case scenario is we force them to use their trump card. Disciple, I shall leave this to you, Jian Wushuang said casually. I understand. He Xiao nodded his head as an idea formed in his head. He Xiao left once again. Meanwhile, Jian Wushuang sat at the window seat in the tavern. He smiled lightly as he drank wine and looked at the scenery outside the window. The town that Jian Wushuang was in was near the Real Martial Arts Divine Church, hence many of their disciples were gathered there. Many of the top-tier experts and almighties would also appear here. Even now, there was an almighty from the Real Martial Arts Divine Church here at this town. Within a secret room, many figures gathered here, and the leader was the man in crimson armor. The Lord is satisfied with this batch of virgins. These are your rewards. The man in crimson armor threw a Chen Kuan ring to the people in front of him. When the people scanned the ring, they were all pleasantly surprised. The man in crimson armor then said, I have already given you the rewards. Remember, bring the virgins here every 30 years. Do not be negligent. If the Lord is angry, no one can save you. Yes, yes. The figures within the room nodded their heads. Right then, boom. A loud bang was heard as a sword light appeared out of nowhere and sliced the secret room. The ruthless sword light tore everyone apart and killed them instantly. Only the man in crimson armor survived. Chapter 22:19 Reinforcements. Damn it. Seeing the dead bodies around him, the man in crimson armor looked dark. He looked at the man entering the room coldly. Who are you? Lineage of Stars, Xianxia said coldly. You are from Lineage of Stars? The man in crimson armor was first stunned, before breaking out in rage. How dare you appear here and kill so many experts from the real martial arts divine church? You speak too much. Xianxia did not want to waste time speaking and attacked. Sword essence turned into a brilliant crimson sword river. The crimson sword river was very attractive. It appeared in front of the man in crimson armor in a flash. So fast. The man in crimson armor was shocked as he instinctively raised the battle blade he was holding to block the attack. Clang! A loud collision was heard as a vast amount of energy exploded beside the right arm of the man in crimson armor. He backed off quickly. How is this possible? We are both in the realm of Sir God, but why is he so much stronger than me? The man in crimson armor was in disbelief as he flipped out a transmission token and requested backup. Seeing this, Xianxia squinted his eyes. He was not angry. Instead, he was elated. He wanted the man in crimson to ask for help. Xianxia roared as he continued to attack. A continuous stream of sword essence completely suppressed the man in crimson armor. These two Sir Gods started to battle it out at the center of the town. The peaceful town became noisy as the two started to battle. A large amount of cultivators rose to the air to watch the battle. This is a battle between almighties? I recognize the man using the battle blade. He is Sir God Mo Chio from the real martial arts divine church. I don't recognize the other man. However, he is very powerful as he can completely suppress Sir God Mo Chio. Real Martial Arts Divine Church's headquarters is right around the corner. He dares to attack Sir God Mo Chio here? The experts from Real Martial Arts Divine Church should be on their way. Many of the cultivators chattered. Many of the cultivators from the Tavan walked out to watch the battle. Zhen Wushuang was the only one who sat there, smiling, holding a winning trophy in his hand. Even though he was not looking at the battlefield, his soul power encompassed the entire area and he could see everything clearly. His sword skills have improved greatly over these years. Zhen Wushuang smiled lightly. He knew clearly that Xianxia was definitely a top-tier Sir God and could put up a fight against Emperor Gods. As for Sir God Mo Chio, he was just an ordinary Sir God. By rights, Xianxia could have killed him easily. Of course, Xianxia was holding back and had intentionally suppressed Sir God Mo Chio. His purpose was simple: attract more experts from the real martial arts divine church to come over. Emperor God Bai Xing, who was within the real martial arts divine church, had received the message from Sir God Mo Chio. Xianxia from the Lineage of Stars came to the territory controlled by the real martial arts divine church and is fighting Mo Chio right now? Emperor God Bai Xing squinted his eyes as he had a cold look. I knew that Lineage of Stars would definitely do something when Emperor God Ling Chu disappeared in my territory. I did not expect them to come so quickly. Church Master. I have heard of Xianxia. Apparently, he is a lineal disciple of the Sword Emperor and has great fighting power. Even though he is only in the realm of Sir God, he can go head-to-head with Emperor Gods. With his fighting power, Mo Chio should be in a bad spot. We should go and reinforce him quickly, a Sir God said. Of course we will go and reinforce him. However, the Lineage of Stars must have some trump cards if they dare to come all the way here. Xianxia will not be the only expert. There will definitely be other experts hidden somewhere, Emperor God said in a low voice. This is what we will do. The few of you will go and reinforce Mo Chio immediately. Bring along 2 blood slaves with you. If you run into trouble, let these 2 blood slaves go and settle it. If they can't, message me and I will ask the Lord to help us. Yes. The few Sir Gods nodded their heads solemnly and set off. Xianxia and Mo Chio were still fighting in the large town. Naturally, Sir God Mo Chio kept retreating. Right when Sir God Mo Chio could not take it anymore, 3 figures appeared in the distance. How dare you, Xianxia? Even if you are from the Lineage of Stars, we will not let you leave easily when you murder someone within the real martial arts divine church territory. 2 yells were heard. The surrounding cultivators heard the 2 yells and they understood why Xianxia dared to attack. So that man is from the lineage of stars? No wonder he dared to attack. I heard that the lineage of stars and the real martial arts divine church were enemies. While the spectators were exclaiming, the three Sir Gods linked up with Mo Chiu as they looked at Xianxia angrily as that all that came. Xianxia's face darkened. The few of us are more than enough to take care of you. Attack now, suppress him. Then, ask his master, the Sword Emperor, to come personally to collect him, one of the Sir Gods said. There was an uproar from everyone in the town. Suppress Xianxia, then ask the Sword Emperor personally to get him? Within the eternal chaotic world, those who were educated all knew who the Sword Emperor was. He was one of the most powerful men within the eternal chaotic world. A mere real martial arts divine church was not qualified for the Sword Emperor to come down personally. Ha ha. His tone is really demanding. Zhen Wushuang smiled lightly. At the center of the town, Xianxia started fighting against the four Sir Gods from the real martial arts divine church. Even though he had been fighting four alone, he was not afraid at all. He no longer held back and fought with all his might. He had fought four Sir Gods and was still at an advantage. Xianxia flicked his sword up as a ghostly sword light pierced the chest of one of the Sir Gods. There was a large wound on his chest. He was severely injured. The four Sir Gods were already at a disadvantage. With one of them getting injured, their disadvantage in battle grew bigger. Chapter 22:20 Blood Slave. This Xianxia is definitely the lineal disciple of the Sword Emperor. He is extremely powerful. If this continues, the four of us might be defeated by him. The more the four Sir Gods from the real martial arts divine church fought, the more surprised they were at Xianxia's battle power. We have no choice. Use the blood slaves, one of the Sir Gods said coldly. The other three nodded their heads in approval. The Sir God waved his hands as two figures which radiated enormous amounts of blood chi appeared in the sky above. Heh! Xianxia focused his eyes before staring at one of the figures. He was looking at a pale, weak, and skinny elder man. The aura this man radiated was at the level of Emperor God. Emperor God Ling Chu. Xianxia was shocked. This weak and elder man was Emperor God Ling Chu from Lineage of Stars. He was the one who had gone missing after reaching this place. No one had expected him to appear so suddenly. Even though his aura was still at the level of an Emperor God, the vibes he had were completely different. What happened? What did you do to Emperor God Ling Chu? Xianxia asked. VAR AXID 6327 document element biodex ID 6327 SSP 6327-math floor date now. Windowed at pubic stag windowed pubic stag haha. What happened to him? We just made him into a blood slave. Don't worry, you will become like him soon, the Sir Gods from the real martial arts divine church laughed. Xianxia looked dark. He could see that Emperor God Ling Chu and the other peak Sir God had lost their own consciousness and were staring at him in a hostile manner. In the tavern far away. Are they under soul control? Zhen Wushuang squinted his eyes as he studied the two figures who radiated large amounts of blood chi. No. Even if they are under soul control, their vitality signs would be there and the vibes they give would be like any other humans. However, these two people here have no vitality signs at all. It is as though they are battle puppets. Battle puppets. Zhen Wushuang had already realized that Emperor God Ling Chu and the other peak Sir God had been made into battle puppets using certain weird techniques. To forcefully make an Emperor God into a battle puppet was much more cruel than soul control. Looks like my deductions are right. There are people supporting them. And these people come from. Zhen Wushuang started to think to himself. On the battlefield. Blood slave, kill him. The Sir God from the real martial arts divine church ordered. The two blood slaves did not hesitate and attacked Xianxia. One of the battle puppets was an Emperor God while the other was a peak Sir God. This was a much more powerful lineup compared to the four Sir Gods from the real martial arts divine church. Emperor God Ling Chu was already very powerful among the Emperor Gods. After he had become a blood slave, his battle power had become one level higher and he could put heavy pressure on Xianxia. I cannot fend off Emperor God Ling Chu alone. Xianxia knew this clearly. Hence, when Emperor God Ling Chu moved, He waved his hands and summoned 4 figures who were in gray armor. These 4 figures were 4 silver armor Dao soldiers. Jian Wushuang deliberately told Xianxia to bring these Dao soldiers along before they set off. Any one of the 4 silver armor Dao soldiers had the power of an ordinary emperor god, though they lacked fighting techniques. However, 4 of such Dao soldiers could still stop Emperor God Ling Chu easily. As long as Emperor God Ling Chu was stopped, Xianxia could take care of the last peak Sir God easily. The battle continued at the center of the town. It became increasingly fierce. Initially, the 4 Sir Gods were pleased when they had just brought out the blood slave. However, that changed when they saw that Xianxia had deployed the 4 Dao soldiers which had stopped Emperor God Ling Chu. Xianxia brought 4 silver armor Dao soldiers. This is troublesome. With the 4 silver armor Dao soldiers, there is nothing we can do even if we have 2 blood slaves. Quick, update what happened here to the church master. Let him make the decision. The 4 Sir Gods messaged Emperor God Bai Xing immediately. Within the headquarters of the Real Martial Arts Divine Church. As expected, things are not so simple. We only know that Xianxia has 4 Dao silver armor Dao soldiers. If I am not wrong, there are other experts hiding in the dark, or he has other tricks up his sleeves. Emperor God Bai Xing was not surprised when he received the message. There is nothing the 2 blood slaves and Mo Qiu and friends can do in this situation. Even if I was there, the experts from Lineage of Stars would intercept me. If this is the case, I shall ask the lords for help. Emperor God Bai Xing no longer hesitated and went to look for the lords immediately. Within one of the quiet palaces. Lord. Emperor God Bai Xing stood respectfully in front of the middle-aged man in silvery, loose robes. What is the matter? The middle-aged man raised his head and looked at Emperor God Bai Xing. His attitude was extremely cold. Emperor God Bai Xing was only an emperor god. Back in the ancient past, he had just been an ordinary expert in the middle-stage chaotic realm. The middle-aged man would not take him seriously. The middle-aged man would not even take the entire Real Martial Arts Divine Church. If not for his special addiction to virgin blood and his elder brothers needing resources, he would not have had any interactions with the Real Martial Arts Divine Church. Lord. Previously, you made Emperor God Ling Chu into a blood slave. The clan he was from, Lineage of Stars, sent experts here. They are now at one of the towns outside of the Real Martial Arts Divine Church and are fighting with the experts from our church. They might not be able to hold on for long, Emperor God Bai Xing said carefully. The middle-aged man had a calm manner. The Real Martial Arts Divine Church did search for certain resources under the command of him and his 2 brothers. He knew that the method that the church had used would definitely provoke other clans. Hence, they had agreed that they would help if the church encountered any problems. When Emperor God Ling Chu first reached the territory belonging to the Real Martial Arts Divine Church, the middle-aged man settled him personally. This is quite annoying. How many people did Lineage of Stars send, and what realms are they in? The middle-aged man asked casually. From what we know, they only sent 1 Sir God named Xianxia, Emperor God Bai Xing said. This is ridiculous. You ask me to help you to deal with a Sir God. Are the people from the Real Martial Arts Divine Church all useless? The middle-aged man roared in anger. Lord, please calm down. Even though he is a Sir God, he is a genius. His fighting power is that of an ordinary emperor god. Furthermore, he brought along 4 silver armor Dao soldiers. Emperor God Bai Xing quickly explained.